Welcome to Griffonomics. It is Monday, February 2nd, 2026.
Hard to believe we're already a month into the new year. It feels like it just started.
It really does. And, looking at the markets, looking at the geopolitical landscape, the pace of change hasn't slowed down one bit.
If anything, it's speeding up.
It really is. Today, we are doing a deep dive into a company that we've been tracking for a long time, but I have to say, if you haven't looked at them in the last 6 months, you probably don't even recognize them. We are talking about Ondas Inc., ticker symbol ONDS.
That's so true. I think for a lot of people, the mental model for Ondas is still stuck in, 2024, maybe 2025?
Right.
You might think of them as Ondas Holdings,
Yeah.
a collection of interesting, maybe slightly disconnected tech assets.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you know them for the rail networks or maybe for the drone ports. But the company we are looking at today, in February 2026, is a fundamentally different animal.
That is exactly what we need to parse today. The world of defense technology is shifting. I mean, really shifting. We've moved past the era of what I'd call science projects. The cool prototypes, the viral videos of robots doing backflips that never actually get deployed.
Right, the stuff that looks great on YouTube, but you'd never take it into a real conflict.
Exactly. We are now firmly in the era of industrialized, massive scale. And the central tension we found in the research for this deep dive is how Ondas has kind of suddenly pivoted to be right at the center of that shift.
It's the shift from can we build it to can we build 10,000 of them? And will they actually work in a heavy jamming environment? That's a whole different question.
A completely different question. And to unpack this, we're looking at their transformation into what they are calling a neoprime defense contractor.
Neoprime. It's a catchy term. You have to give them that.
It sounds like something out of a cyberpunk novel, but it's actually a very specific economic concept that we're going to get into. Our mission for this deep dive is to generate a really granular report on this transformation. We're going to look at their dominance in the drone warfare revolution, their hold on critical infrastructure, and this whole system of systems approach they keep talking about.
And to do that, we've gone through a serious stack of sources. I mean, we have the Investor Day transcripts from just last month, January 2026. We've got this thing called the Sharp Chart Investment Thesis, which is a fascinating visual, by the way.
It is. It really lays it out.
We have analyst reports from H.C. Wainwright and a whole series of internal memos regarding acquisitions like Raytheon Aero and their venture capital investments in Ukraine.
So we have the financials, we have the tech stack, and we have the geopolitical strategy. Let's get into it.
Let's dive in.
I want to start with the basics, but the basics here actually signal the entire strategic shift. Section 1, the strategic inflection point, or as we're calling it, from holdings to Inc.
It seems so superficial on the surface, doesn't it? Just changing a name.
It does. I mean, companies rebrand all the time, usually when they're in trouble or when they just want to look fresh. But you're arguing that dropping the word holdings from their name in January was actually a functional signal?
It was a massive signal to the market and, specifically to their customers. Think about the psychology of the word holdings. It implies a passive collection.
Right, like a private equity firm or something.
Exactly. It suggests a financial wrapper around a bunch of separate companies. Company A makes radars, Company B makes drones, and they don't really talk to each other. They're just assets on a balance sheet.
Huh.
By changing it to Ondas Inc. and officially announcing that name change just a few weeks ago, the CEO, Eric Brock, was signaling the death of the portfolio model.
So it's not just an investment vehicle anymore, it's an operating company.
No. It represents a move to a unified operating entity. The whole shift is from innovation, which is just inventing new things, to integration. They aren't just inventing gadgets in silos anymore. They are building a unified platform. In all the documents, they refer to this as the system of systems.
I want to put a pin in system of systems because that phrase comes up about 50 times in the transcript, so it's clearly important.
It's core to the whole thesis.
But before we get technical, let's talk geography, because they also moved the headquarters.
They did. Packed up and moved the corporate HQ to West Palm Beach, Florida.
Now, the cynic in me says, nice weather, great golf courses, zero state income tax. It looks like a typical corporate maneuver, but the sources are arguing this is strategic.
It is definitely more than just the tax break, though I'm sure they don't mind that.
I'm sure.
No, it's about the defense technology cluster. If you look at a map of that specific part of Florida, it is rapidly becoming a major hub for aerospace and defense. You have Pratt & Whitney there, you have Sikorsky nearby, you have L3 Harris, By moving there, Ondas isn't just chasing sunshine. They are physically positioning themselves right next to their senior customers.
So it's about access. It's about being in the room.
It's about being taken seriously by the big boys. It's a psychological thing. If your headquarters is in Silicon Valley, you're viewed as a tech company. If you're in the Florida aerospace corridor, you're viewed as a defense contractor. They want to be seen as a prime, not another startup with a cool app.
Which brings us right back to that term, neoprime. You mentioned this is a gap in the market. Can you define what a neoprime actually is? Because prime usually refers to the giants, right? The Lockheeds, the Raytheons.
Correct. So on one side of the ring, you have the legacy primes, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman. These companies are massive. They have, almost unlimited resources, tens of thousands of engineers. But, and this is the big but, they are slow.
Glacially slow.
Their procurement cycles are glacial. Their innovation is often bogged down by just immense bureaucracy, and they are very, very risk averse.
The dinosaurs, they're huge, they're powerful, but
Yeah.
they take a long time to turn around.
That's a perfect analogy. And then on the other side of the ring, you have the startups, the science projects we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
They're agile, they have the cutting-edge AI, they move incredibly fast, but they lack scale. They don't have the capital to survive a 2-year government delay on a contract, and crucially, they can't manufacture at volume. If the Army suddenly asks for 5,000 units next month, a startup just collapses under the weight of that order.
Okay, so Ondas is trying to inhabit that middle ground, the space between the giant dinosaurs and the tiny, fast mammals.
Precisely. A neoprime is a company that sits in that Goldilocks zone. It has the agility and the tech stack of a startup, using modern AI, modern robotics, commercial off-the-shelf components to keep costs down, but it has the balance sheet and the logistical power of a prime. They can move fast, but they can also endure. And they can deliver what they call integrated outcomes.
Integrated outcomes. Okay, that sounds like corporate speak. Translate that for me.
It is, but it's important. In defense terms, it means I don't want to buy a drone, I want to buy a secure perimeter. A startup sells you a drone, a neoprime sells you a system that detects a threat, deploys a drone to get eyes on it, identifies the intruder using AI, and then neutralizes it all automatically. That is an integrated outcome.
Got it. You're buying the solution, not the tool.
Exactly.
Okay, so to be a neoprime, to sit at that table, you need that balance sheet you mentioned. You can't just have cool ideas. You need cold, hard cash to weather the storms. This leads us perfectly to Section 2, the financial fortress. Because looking at these numbers for 2026, the cash position it's startling.
It is a staggering amount of capital for a company of this market cap. It really changed the entire conversation around them.
Let's talk about the war chest. According to the Investor Day transcripts, Ondas now sits on a pro forma cash position of over $1.5 billion. That is billion with a B.
That is correct. Following a major capital raise, they have secured what they call a fortress balance sheet.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here. Why does a company that was doing under $50 million in revenue just a year ago need $1.5 billion in cash? Is that just burning a hole in their pocket? Are they just going to go on a shopping spree?
It's a fair question, but this is where you have to understand the government customer. Cash is a competitive weapon in defense contracting. It creates what they call longevity confidence.
Longevity confidence. I like that.
Imagine you're a procurement officer of the Department of Defense. You're about to sign a contract for critical infrastructure protection. We're talking protecting nuclear sites or our borders. That needs to run for 10 years.
Right, a long-term commitment.
It's a huge commitment. You're not going to sign that contract with a startup that has 3 months of cash runway left in the bank. You just won't. You need to know they will be there in 2030 to service the equipment and provide updates.
So the cash pile basically tells the Pentagon, we aren't going anywhere. We're a safe bet.
Exactly. It signals stability. It tells them we can weather the storm, we can invest in R&D, even if your contract gets delayed by 6 months, we can scale manufacturing without needing to go get a loan. It creates this margin of safety that undercapitalized rivals just don't have.
Yeah.
If you're a competitor with maybe slightly better tech but no cash, Ondas wins because they are the safer bet for the government.
That makes perfect sense. It's insurance for the customer. And there's also this detail in the notes about warrants. The sources mention potential access to an additional $4.9 billion. That's an insane number.
Yeah. This is a very interesting financing structure they put together. The deal included warrants with strike prices at $20 and $28 per share.
And for those not familiar, a warrant just gives the investor the right to buy stock at a certain price in the future.
Right. So if the stock hits $20, the investors will almost certainly exercise those warrants, buy the stock, and that action pumps even more cash. billions more into Ondas's treasury.
So it aligns management incentives perfectly with the investors. They only get that extra mega war chest if they execute and the stock price goes up.
Exactly. It's a performance-based capital unlock. It says, if we do well, we get even more firepower to grow faster.
Okay, so they have the money, a lot of money. But let's look at the revenue, because this is where the inflection point really shows up in the data.
Right.
The guidance for 2026 is, well, it's aggressive.
Aggressive is a polite way to put it. It was a complete shocker to the street when they announced it.
So let's lay it out. The 2025 estimate was around $48 million. Solid growth, but, nothing crazy for a tech company.
Right.
But the 2026 guidance is $170 to $180 million.
That's a roughly 250% increase year over year.
How is that even possible? I mean, really, usually in a hardware business, you see 20% growth, maybe 30% if you're having a great year. How do you triple revenue in 1 year without just making up numbers?
It comes down to that shift we mentioned earlier, from pilot programs to deployment. For the last few years, everyone has been testing. The Army was testing drones, railroads were testing networks.
Little trials.
Exactly. Pilot programs are small. $50 K here, $100 there. It's R&D money. Now, those tests are over. The government's drone dominance program and standardized infrastructure spending are kicking in. They aren't selling 1 or 2 units anymore for a test. They are deploying entire fleets.
So they've moved from the let's try it out phase to the we're buying it in bulk phase.
Exactly. And when you move to bulk in defense and critical infrastructure, the numbers compound very, very quickly. You're seeing multi-million-dollar, even tens of millions of dollars orders replacing those small consulting fees.
And what about profitability? Because usually hypergrowth like this means you're burning cash like crazy to fuel the fire.
That's the roadmap they laid out, and it's surprisingly disciplined. They expect the product companies, so the actual subsidiaries making the drones and radios, to be EBITDA positive by Q3 of this year, 2026.
That's soon.
That's soon. Then the OAS platform layer, the software and integration part, turns positive in 2027. And the parent company, the whole thing, hits profitability by Q1 2028.
And the margins. I remember seeing a note on this that was pretty surprising.
This is where the neoprime model really shines over the legacy primes. Legacy players, the Lockheeds of the world, usually operate on 12%, maybe 30% gross margins. So low margin, high volume manufacturing game for them.
Right. Bending metal.
Right. Ondas is targeting gross margins of around 50%.
Wow. That is significantly higher. Why is there such a gap?
It's because they are selling software-defined hardware and recurring services. They aren't just selling you the physical drone. They're selling the AI that runs on it, the maintenance contract, the software upgrades, the data analysis. It's a tech margin profile on a defense hardware product.
Okay, so the financial picture is incredibly strong, assuming they can hit those numbers. But you can have all the money in the world. If your product doesn't work, it doesn't matter.
Absolutely.
So let's move to section 3. Ondas Autonomous Systems, or OAS, and this concept of the kill chain.
This is the core engine of the business right now. This is the growth story.
So just to clarify the structure for the listener, we have 3 main engines in the company, right? OAS is the defense and growth engine.
Okay.
Then you have Ondas Networks, which is the rail business, and Ondas Capital, the investment arm.
That's the structure. But OAS Ondas Autonomous Systems is where the explosive growth and the whole neoprime story really live.
So talk to me about this kill chain. It sounds aggressive.
Standard military term, but in the context of drones, it's absolutely critical. It stands for detect, identify, decide, and act. To stop a drone threat, you have to do all 4 of those things, and you have to do them almost instantly.
And Ondas claims to own the whole chain.
They do, and that's very rare. Most competitors just do one part of it. You have companies that say, we make a great radar, we can detect the drone. Or another one says, we make a great jammer, we can act on the drone. Ondas says, we will see it, we will know what it is, our AI will decide what to do about it, and our effector will stop it. One seamless system.
Let's break down the stopping it part. The sources mention CUAS, counter-unmanned aerial systems. They talk about soft kill and hard kill. What is the practical difference between those two?
So soft kill is handled by their subsidiary Centrix. It uses what they call cyber over RF technology.
Cyber over RF. Okay, you have to translate that.
Yeah, it sounds like jargon. Basically, it's protocol manipulation. They aren't just blasting noise to jam the signal, which is what most people think of as jamming. That's a brute force approach.
Right.
They were actually injecting code into the drone's communication protocol while it's in mid-flight. They essentially hack the drone, take over the controls, and command it to land safely at a designated location.
That sounds like magic. You tell the enemy drone, I'm your pilot now.
Effectively, yes. It requires incredibly advanced signal processing and a deep understanding of every drone protocol out there. And it's crucial for what we call the lower skies in sensitive areas.
What do you mean by that?
Think about a stadium during the Super Bowl, or an airport like JFK. You see a suspicious drone, you can't just shoot it down with a missile or a gun.
No, of course not. What comes up must come down. You don't want shrapnel falling on a crowd or a 747.
Exactly. So you can't have a kinetic solution. You have to hijack the drone and land it gently, safely away from people. That's soft kill.
Okay, that makes sense. So what about hard kill? When do you need that?
Hard kill is for when soft kill doesn't work. Maybe the drone is fully autonomous and isn't listening to any radio signals, it's just flying on GPS to its target. Or maybe it's the nightmare scenario. A swarm of suicide drones coming into military base. Jamming one won't stop the other 9.
Right. You need a physical solution.
That's where their company Iron Drone comes in.
Iron Drone. Even the name sounds tough.
It is. They make an autonomous interceptor drone called the Raider. It sits in a box, a drone-in-a-box system, and when a threat is detected, it launches automatically, flies incredibly fast, locks onto the target using computer vision, and physically intercepts it.
How does it intercept? Does it just crash into it?
No, that would be messy. It uses a net and a parachute. It gets close, fires a net to entangle the hostile drone, and then deploys a parachute to bring the whole package down safely.
So it's a drone specifically designed to hunt and capture other drones.
Exactly. It's a kinetic solution, but a controlled one. And the beauty of the net capture is that it minimizes collateral damage. There's no explosion. And it often preserves the enemy drone for forensics. You can study it later to see who sent it and what technology they were using.
That is wild. So they cover the polite takeover and the physical takedown. And bringing it back to the moats we talked about earlier, the sources make a really big deal about something called the Blue List, specifically regarding their Optimus system by American Robotics. Why is being on a list such a big deal?
The Blue List is the golden ticket in U.S. defense sales. It is the absolute key to frictionless selling to the federal government.
Okay.
It's a list managed by the Defense Innovation Unit and the Defense Contract Management Agency, the DCMA. Achieving Blue List status, which they did in January this year for the Optimus system, means the system has been exhaustively vetted for cybersecurity and supply chain integrity.
So that means no Chinese parts that are secretly phoning home to Beijing.
That is the #1 concern. The NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, banned the use of Chinese drones, like DJI, in any federal operations. The Blue List is the official roster of approved, safe, American-made or Allied-made alternatives.
So what does that actually do for sales? How does it help them?
It creates a friction-free procurement path. If a federal agency, say, the Border Patrol or the Department of Energy, wants to buy a drone for surveillance, and that drone is on the Blue List, they can just buy it. They don't have to do their own year-long security audit. It's pre-approved.
So it's like TSA pre-check for government contracts.
It's even better than that. It's like having a diplomatic passport. It's a massive regulatory moat that competitors struggle to cross because getting on that list takes years of rigorous testing and a complete transparent audit of your entire supply chain down to the microchip level.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have the cash, we have the defense systems to stop drones, but Section 4 is where it gets really interesting for me because it seems like they're now going on the offensive.
This is a major strategic pivot that I think the market hasn't fully digested yet. It's a huge shift.
We're talking about the acquisition of Raytheon Aero. This is a pending deal that was mentioned in the Jan 2026 documents.
Correct. Up until now, we've mostly talked about defending against drones or using them for surveillance, for monitoring. Raytheon Aero changes the game entirely because they bring heavy fuel propulsion and VTOL capability.
Okay, V2L, I get. Vertical takeoff and landing. Like a helicopter, it can take off from anywhere. But heavy fuel, why does the type of gas matter so much? Isn't the whole world going electric with batteries?
In the consumer world, yes. In the military world, absolutely not. The military runs on heavy fuel, specifically JP8, which is a type of kerosene, and diesel. They have a massive global logistics tail designed to move that specific fuel type everywhere in the world. They do not want to start carrying around pallets of sensitive lithium batteries that run out in 30 minutes.
Right, and they don't want to carry gasoline, which is highly flammable.
Exactly. Gasoline has a low flash point and explodes easily. JP8 is much more stable. So if your drone runs on the same stuff the tanks and the Humvees run on, you are infinitely more useful to the frontline soldier.
You just plug into the existing supply chain.
You simplify logistics immensely. But even more importantly, heavy fuel engines give you range and endurance. Batteries might give you 40 minutes of flight time. A heavy fuel engine gives you hours.
And what does that range allow them to do?
It allows Ondas to add long-range strike to their portfolio. It directly addresses the Pentagon's three current obsessions: mass, range, and affordability.
So these aren't just cameras in the sky anymore. These are attack drones.
Yes. The Defender system, which is part of the Rotron acquisition, is described in the sources as a one-way effector.
A one-way effector. That's a very polite way of saying a suicide drone or a loitering munition.
It is. But in modern military doctrine, they call them attritable systems. The idea is that the drone itself is cheap enough to lose. You can send a swarm of 10 of them at a target, and if you lose 5 to air defenses, it's financially acceptable because the whole swarm costs less than one traditional cruise missile, but you still get the job done.
And this Rotron deal brings that entire capability in-house.
It does. It completely rounds out their portfolio. Now they can see the threat, stop the threat, and if necessary, strike the threat at long range. They own the full spectrum.
But it's not just the air, right? There was another acquisition mentioned. They also bought a company called RoboTeam.
Right. This is the ground component. This is the bots before boots philosophy.
I like that tagline. Send the robot in first.
It's the future of urban warfare. RoboTeam makes UGVs unmanned ground vehicles. These are used by SWAT teams, special forces, tunnel clearing units.
I've definitely seen videos of these little tank-like robots climbing over rubble, opening doors, checking for IEDs.
Exactly. But here is the neoprime magic again. It's not about buying a drone company and a robot company. It's the integration, the air-ground integration.
What does that look like in practice?
Imagine an aerial drone, an Optimus, is flying over a compound, and it spots a threat or a suspicious object behind a wall. You can automatically signal a RoboTeam ground robot on the street below to go investigate.
So the drone in the sky is talking directly to the robot on the ground without a human having to sit there and play telephone operator.
That's the system of systems. That's the holy grail for modern combat. You have a unified command structure where the machines collaborate with each other. The human stays back, safe, making high-level decisions, go here, clear this building, while the machines execute the dangerous, dirty work. That is what Ondas is building.
Okay, so we have air, we have ground, we have offense, we have defense. But where is all this cutting-edge innovation coming from? They can't just be inventing all of this in a lab in West Palm Beach.
No, they're not.
This leads us to Section 5, the innovation pipeline, and specifically the Ukraine connection, which is really fascinating.
This is a fascinating and, frankly, a very sober part of the story. You have to remember, as we sit here in 2026, Ukraine is currently the Silicon Valley of drone warfare.
Because they're in an active, high-intensity war.
Necessity is the mother of invention. They are iterating on technology faster than anyone else on the planet because they have to. A drone that works today might be useless next week because the Russians have updated their jamming frequencies. So the innovation cycle in Ukraine isn't measured in years, it's measured in days.
And Ondas is tapping directly into this.
Directly. Through their Ondas capital arm. They have a specific mandate to find, invest in, and localize battle-proven technologies from Ukraine for NATO markets.
And there's a key figure here mentioned in the notes, James Acuna.
Yes, he sits on their advisory board. He's former CIA. He runs something called the Baltic Ghost Wing Center of Excellence. He provides a direct pipeline to that real-time battlefield intelligence and technology.
So they aren't guessing what works. They aren't reading reports. They know what works because it was literally used yesterday on the front lines.
Correct. They have a letter of intent with a Ukrainian company called Drone Fight Group to invest $11 million. This is all about taking tech that has survived the crucible of Russian electronic warfare, which is the most advanced and hostile jamming environment on Earth, and bringing it to the U.S., hardening it, and scaling it.
But they aren't just importing tech. They are also building a massive manufacturing base here. We have to talk about Alabama.
Drone Factory 01.
It sounds like a movie set, but it's a real place. Right?
It's a very real place. It's a $35 million investment in a company called Performance Drone Works, or PDW, in Huntsville, Alabama.
Why Alabama? Why Huntsville?
Huntsville is a massive aerospace hub. They call it Rocket City. But specifically, this factory enables scale. It is designed from the ground up to produce 100,000 NDAA-compliant drones a year.
100,000. That is industrial scale. That's not a workshop. That's a factory.
That's the neoprime scale we talked about. And nose the tets there again. NDAA-compliant.
No Chinese parts.
Zero Chinese parts. This aligns perfectly with the Pentagon's drone dominance program. The U.S. government has realized it has a massive deficit in small, cheap, American-made drones, and they need thousands of them now. Ondas has positioned itself to be the factory that builds them.
It really connects all the dots. They get the rapid, battle-tested innovation from Ukraine, and they plug it into the mass production capability in Alabama.
That's the strategy in a nutshell. Innovation at the edge, industrialization at the core.
Now, I promised at the beginning we would talk about something slightly less explosive, but you could argue just as important to the business. Section 6, the hidden gem.
The boring but incredibly lucrative business.
We're talking about railroads. Ondas networks.
This is the part of the business that often gets overlooked because it's not shooting lasers or catching drones with nets, but it pays the bills with very steady recurring revenue.
So what exactly are they doing for railroads? I know they have this full MAX system.
They are providing the mission-critical private wireless backbone for the next generation of rail operations. But here is the kicker, and this is what the market often misses. It's practically a monopoly.
A monopoly. That's a really strong word. How can you say that?
Because the Association of American Railroads, the AAR, which is the governing body for all the major railroads, formally adopted Ondas's IEE 802.16T standard. That standard is their product, which they call FullMax.
Wait, so the industry association, all the big players got together and said, this is the standard we are all going to use for our next-gen communications.
Correct. It's not just a product choice by one railroad. It's the industry standard. It replaces the old, creaky, legacy cabling and radio systems from the 80s and 90s.
And how big is this market?
For the North American Class I rail upgrades alone, the company estimates it's a $1.3 billion potential market.
$1.3 billion, and they own the standard that everyone has to use.
And to help them scale it out, they have a deep partnership with Siemens Mobility. Siemens, the global industrial giant, markets the technology as Airlink. So you have Siemens selling Ondas technology to a market that has effectively mandated its use.
That sounds like a license to print money.
It's high margin, recurring revenue. It creates an incredibly stable floor for the company, while the defense side provides the explosive, albeit sometimes lumpy, upside.
Right, because government contracts can be unpredictable.
Exactly. The rail business provides the steady, predictable cash flow. It's the safety net. If the drone war cools down for a year or a big procurement gets delayed, the trains still need to run on time.
It diversifies the risk portfolio beautifully. It's the anchor.
It's the anchor, exactly.
So we've covered a lot of ground. We've untacked the pivot, the cash, the kill chain, the offensive capabilities, and this rail monopoly. Now, let's wrap this all up. Section 7. The final verdict. What are the analysts saying, and what are the real risks here?
The street loves the story right now. H.C. Wainwright has a buy rating with a $25 price target.
And considering where the stock was trading before this big run-up, that implies a huge amount of upside still to come.
A lot of upside. The core thesis from the analysts is risk defined, portfolio protected. The argument is that Ondas is consolidating a very fragmented market, the drone and counter-drone market, at the exact moment of mass adoption. They're catching the wave perfectly.
But, and there is always a but in this show, we need to be realistic. This all sounds a little too good to be true. What could go wrong? Let's play devil's advocate.
No, you have to. There are very real risks here. The biggest one, in my opinion, is just raw execution risk.
Scaling from, what was it, $48 million to $180 million is hard. Really hard.
It is incredibly difficult. It's not just a line on a spreadsheet. You have to triple your manufacturing output. You have to integrate complex global supply chains. You have to hire and train hundreds of people. Things break when you grow that fast. Quality control can slip. Shipments can be late.
And you mentioned the integration challenges, too, not just of technology, but of people.
Think about the culture. You're integrating these very proud, very smart Israeli engineering teams from Aerobotics and Iron Drone, with British propulsion experts from Raytheon, with American manufacturing teams from PDW in Alabama, and American robotics in Massachusetts.
Those are very different cultures.
Very different cultures, different time zones, different ways of working. Getting them all to row in the same direction and work together as one cohesive neoprime is a massive, massive management challenge.
And then there is the elephant in the room for any defense contractor, the government itself.
The glacial pace of procurement. Even with the blue list, even with all the urgency in the world, government contracts can slip to the right. A budget dispute in Congress can delay a $50 million order by 6 months. That is completely outside of Ondas's control, but it can absolutely wreck a quarterly earnings report and spook the market.
So nothing is guaranteed, but all the pieces are on the board for them.
The pieces are definitely on the board. They have the money, they have the tech, they have the regulatory approvals, and they have the market tailwinds. Now, as you said, They just have to execute.
So what does this all mean for us, for the listener trying to make sense of this?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, 2026 is shaping up to be the year of the neoprime. The entire defense industry is changing. The days of the untouchable legacy giants might be numbered, or at the very least, they're going to have to share the stage with these faster, more agile players.
It raises a really interesting question. If Ondas succeeds, if they hit these numbers, do they become the next Lockheed Martin in 20 years? Or does Lockheed Martin just write a check in 2 years and buy them?
That is the ultimate provocative thought here. If 2026 goes as planned, will the legacy primes try to acquire Ondas before it gets too big and becomes a true peer competitor? Or has Ondas, with its war chest and its M&A strategy, already become the predator that eats the smaller fish in the pond?
That is a fascinating thought to end on. Are they the prey for the old guard, or have they already become the predator?
With $1.5 billion in cash and a kill chain that actually works, I'd say they are looking a lot more like a predator these days.
Well, there you have it. The deep dive into the Ondas transformation. We've unpacked the pivot from holdings to ink, the massive war chest, the drone warfare revolution, and that hidden rail monopoly.
It's a classic case of seeing where the world is going, which is clearly towards autonomy and integration, and positioning yourself right in the path of that progress.
I want to know what stands out to you, the listener. Is it the rail monopoly acting as that stable, boring safety net? Or is the drone warfare revolution the main event? Are you buying this neoprime story, or do you think the execution risk is just too high?
It's a high-stakes game, no doubt about it.
It certainly is. Thanks for diving deep with us today. This has been Griffonomics. We'll catch you on the next one.
Stay curious.